good morning. I'm recording this in the morning, but you may be watching it at any time of the day. Hello and welcome to this version of Cervello Live. We've got an amazing guest today, Peter. I've recorded the interview earlier, and there's loads of insight in when we speak to Peter about coaching, identifying your life's purpose, looking at your life as a story and seeing how you can potentially make decisions in your life to be happier, and just looking at how Peter's business, which is a coaching business primarily, helps people do that by taking them out of their normal environment and making sure that they can focus on what might be a really positive financial future for them. However, if you've seen a Cervello Live in the past, you know the format, you know the drill. It's normally 5-10 minutes of some financial planning tips from me. Then we have our guest, and then we have a little bit at the end where we say goodbye. So we're going to follow the format, and what I'd like to talk about today is 5 ways that you can just simply get organised and improve your financial affairs for free or very little money. So I just want to start talking about that, because it's really important that before you come and speak to somebody like me, you're at a point where you're thinking that you definitely need to get organised. Most clients who come to see me are at a point where they've started to think about this sort of stuff. They're getting closer to an age where they go, right, I need to make some changes, and they start to get organised for free on their own until they get to a point where they go, right, now I need professional help from somebody to make sure that those really important decisions I'm making with my money are the right ones, because a lot of times you make those decisions, they're one-offs, you can't go back. So, but what I'd like to do today is share some of the stuff that you can do independently, regardless of whether you need a financial planner or not, to help you have healthier and healthier understanding of your money. So the first thing I'd recommend you do, and again, no money involved, all it'll cost you is a little bit of time, maybe a glass of wine when you're sitting down with your significant other on a rainy Thursday night to do this, but certainly worth doing. Might be the cost of a blank sheet of paper. That's the way that I did it when I looked at my own financial plan, and a pen. But these are 3 questions that I'd recommend anybody ask themselves when they start thinking about money. Number 1, what income would you and your family need, to ensure that you were financially free? And when I say financially free, I mean never worried about money again. Now, a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to finish until I've got millions in the bank. But I'd recommend that it all depends on the lifestyle you want, because really money is a tool to live the life you want. And if that's the case, and we both agree that that's the case, there will be a number that you can establish to say, that would afford me a lifestyle that I'm happy with. So in my financial plan, there's a decent amount of travel involved. So I like to travel. So I know that in my financial plan, in my life now, prior to COVID and hopefully after everything's calmed down, there'll be a lot of travel going on. So certainly think about what you enjoy, think about what you love doing, and think about the income you'd need to ensure that you never needed to worry about money again, because that will inform the financial decisions you need to make moving forward. However, the next question number 2, is really important, because often what people do is say, well, I need 50 grand a year because that's what I spend at the minute. Now, there's 2 challenges with that that I'd highlight to you. Number 1, you've probably got expenses now that when you have got more time to do what you want to do, might not be there. So certainly for Cassie and I, one of them is by the time we're financially free, the mortgage will be paid off. So actually that's an expense that we can take away from that calculation. But also the kids are going to be independent, hopefully. I mean, genuinely at this stage, we genuinely don't know, but hopefully they'll get to an age where they'll be financially independent. Now, interestingly, part of our financial plan is to make sure that we're making provisions for the kids as well, and that's important to consider. However, as a direct expense, paying for their education, paying for their travel, paying for their food, paying for clarinet lessons at the minute, and dance lessons, or whatever it may be, those expenses won't be part of your longer term financial plan when you're financially free. But the thing that people underestimate in our experience is, to give you an example, I've got a client of mine who came in to speak to me and said, I'll need 15 grand a year to live this life. Now, at the time, he worked 50 to 60 hours a week, had built up a significant amount of wealth, and wanted to have a conversation about whether he could stop. So my question to him then was, okay, you've got this 50, 60 hours a week that you're currently spending working. How much of that time are you going to be now spending doing other stuff? And he went, well, all of it. I want to fill my time and do stuff that I've never tried before, and I want to do a lot of travel, because travel was one of his focuses. Now, the challenge that I had, and again, part of our relationship with our clients, is to sometimes challenge what they believe and look at things from a different perspective, is, okay, well, that's fine, but is that going to mean that 15, 20 grand a year is going to be enough to do all the travel that you want to do and live the life you want to do? And the reality for him was no. So when you're looking at that, how much income do you need, costing the fact that there will be expenses that will be gone by the time you get to that point where you're financially free, but also costing the fact that you'll have a lot more time if you were financially free to enjoy yourself, and there might be an expense that comes with that additional time because you're doing what you want to do. And then once you've worked out income and you've made it realistic based on what you've got and what you're going to spend your time doing and the expenses you won't have, what's your next step? What's your small, tiny, incremental next step? In our experience, a lot of people don't take ownership of their money and don't take ownership of their financial affairs or their financial plans because it feels too big and scary. You know, how do I make sure if I'm there that I'm going to get all the way over there to financial independence? Now, taking the jump isn't going to happen, is it? It's not going to happen overnight. But what you can do is take a small incremental step on a regular basis to get you closer to that goal. So the question that you want to ask yourself, and again, it doesn't cost you any money at this point, is what's next? What do I do? Is it just save a little bit more? Is it build my business for sale? Is it engage with somebody like me so we can support you? Is it spend less on this so I can save more for my financial future? Those tiny incremental next steps all add up, and certainly we'd recommend that the question you ask is, and when you've got a financial plan, it should be action focused. You know, what are you going to do next to make sure that you're okay? That's what you want to be doing, tiny incremental next steps. So that's tip one, the 3 questions that you'd ask. Now, tip 2 comes from a conversation I had with a client last week, brand new client who had been putting off dealing with his money for ages. So, approaching retirement, knowing he had to do something about getting organised. And the reason that he hadn't done it is because he'd had sort of 10 to 12 employments because of the nature of his profession over his career. And he had pensions with each and every employment that he'd had. And he just said to me, look, Chris, every time I look at this, I just get confused. It's just really tiring. And I've got a feeling that even though I've got the paperwork for some of them, some of the things that I've got, I just haven't got the documents for, and I don't know where to start. So my second tip is, if you've got pots of money which you own, they're your money because you've worked with employers and paid in, and the employers paid in as well. What are you doing to make sure that you have the information on them so you can claim that money when you need to? And the good news is there's something the government has called the Pension Tracing Service. Free service, you can use it anytime. You just Google Pension Tracing Service, and what it allows you to do is, if you've been in employment, put your employer in, and it will give you the information you need to start contacting people to see if you've got any missing pension pots. Now, I've got the number to hand, but there's billions of pounds in these pension pots of people who have just had employment and then not touched the money. And that seems mad to me, because it's your money. It's your money to claim, and certainly I'd recommend that you look at that. If you just Google Pension Tracing Service, there's a gov.uk website that flags up, and you can get that information immediately. Third thing that I recommend is download a budget plan. So tackling and getting control of your day-to-day finances is one of the best things you can do. Making sure that you're in a position where you understand what's coming in and out, because that allows you to make those small incremental actions to improve your longer term financial affairs I was talking about earlier. Now, Martin Lewis on his website, Money Saving Expert, has an amazing budget plan. Other ones are available, the Money Guidance Service. At Cervello we use one. And if you email me, I'll happily give you that for free. Email hello@cervellofp.co.uk and we'll get it over to you. But yeah, just spending time, again, glass of wine, Thursday night. I know there's more exciting things to do, but just getting organised and being clear on what your financial future looks like takes the stress of money away, and certainly in my experience with the work that I do with my clients in my own life, financial life, empowers you to say, you know what, I know I'm going to be all right. So certainly just getting that clarity is fundamentally important. Okay. Number 4 is, if you're employed, speak to your employer about all the things you can do to get free money. Okay. Now, when I sit down with a lot of clients and they're employed, there's 2 elements that we always look at that typically my clients have neglected to look at, and they're really, really important. So number 1, if you pay more into your pension through work, and most, if not all, employers should have workplace pension schemes that you're in. You're in a position where what happens at the minute is there's minimum levels of contributions that you need to pay and your employer needs to pay on an ongoing basis. However, a lot of employers are more generous than that, and they'll say, if you're paying in 5% of your salary, we'll match it. If you pay in 6%, we'll match it, and we'll match it up to 10%. Now, what that means, and again, pensions are amazing through work because you get tax and national insurance savings, but what it also means is you're doubling your money. If your employer matches how much you pay in, it doesn't come out of your pocket, but the contribution that's going in for your longer term financial future is amazing, because it's double. And again, the best investment returns in the world are not going to be as good as just getting the benefit of that employer contribution. So first thing you do is go to your employer and say, if I were to contribute more into my pension, would you match it? Would you make sure, would you pay more in? The other thing you want to talk about, and again, this is particularly for high earners and those individuals who are approaching retirement, ask your employer about salary sacrifice. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is giving some of your salary away, but not losing the money. That money goes into your pension. Now, why is that a good thing? Again, the employer might contribute more if you contribute more into your pension, but also what happens is the employer saves some national insurance, and what a lot of our clients have done is gone back to their employer and said, I know you're saving a bit of money by me paying a bit more into a pension. Do you mind if I have that? Do you mind if I have that extra bit of national insurance? And a lot of employers, because it's money they wouldn't have had and they want to keep their employees happy, oblige. So certainly ask about salary sacrifice, look at the options you've got in terms of giving some of your salary away for your longer term financial future, because every pound you're going to put in, you're going to get the tax relief, national insurance savings, potential bonus from your employer. It's all free money. And I like the idea of helping our clients make sure they use everything they can to boost their longer term financial future for as little net contribution as possible. And then the third thing when you're looking at employers is just ask about the extra employee benefit. So do you get life cover through work? Do you get sickness cover through work, and what is that? Do you get a ride cycle to work loan scheme where they'll subsidise you buying a bike? Do you get discounts on iPads? Do you get shopping discounts? Do you get there's a massive range of employee benefits that employees often don't look into and don't get access to. I remember I used to work for a large bank, and every year I got their sort of statement and the benefits that I could get to, and certainly at the time I wasn't astute enough to say, right, here's my opportunity to get again benefits that I need for my life through my employer. So look at your employee benefits. There should be an employee benefit handbook, and make sure you're making the most of everything your employer provides. Now, that's number 4. And number 5, and that's for employees, but number 5 is for business owners specifically, and limited company business owners. Now, I'm in that boat. I run a limited company, I run a business, and we get our tax bill at the end of every year. Actually, I say the end of every year. Our one's due at the end of Jan. Our accountant's already calculated how much it's going to be, and it's always a bit of a shock, but always fine because we live in a Western society where we pay tax, and I'm happy with that. But one thing we always focus on in our business is making sure that we make enough pension contributions to reduce our tax liability. Pensions as a wrapper are an amazing way to reduce, particularly if you're a director of a limited company, effectively your company can pay into your pension, and it reduces your corporation tax bill potentially quite significantly depending on how you pay in. So not only are you saving for your own financial future, you're making sure that the tax you pay today is reduced because of that potential saving. So certainly a lot of the business owners we speak to haven't utilised that fully. I'd recommend as a first port of call, and I'm sure you've got one if you run a limited company, speak to your accountant, because he'll be able to highlight the options you've got in terms of saving some of the money in ways that are going to mitigate as much tax as possible. So there are your 5 things. So just to confirm, number 1, understand a bit more about your financial plan and your financial future by asking yourself 3 questions. What income are you going to need? How would you spend your time if money was no object? And what's the next small action you're going to take to help move forward? Number 2 is if you've had a work history where you might have lost pensions, use the pension tracing service to find out where those pensions might be. Number 3 is to get better control of your day-to-day budget, download a budget plan. One thing I want to mention on that is technology is getting better at that as well. So certainly there's some of the challenger banks are allowing you to automate some of that budget planning. So certainly Starling Bank does that, and others do as well. So if you're not like pen and paper or a spreadsheet and you want to use technology to potentially automate the solution, you might want to look at some of the options out there that effectively, when the money comes in the bank or the money goes out the bank, it gets automatically assigned to a category and allows you to budget plan without all the effort of sitting down. But if you haven't got that with your bank and you're quite happy with the service your bank provides, then it might be a case where you just do that. But Martin Lewis's website's good, and you've got others. Number 4 is ask your employer about whether you're entitled to any free money. Can you pay more into your pension? And if you did, would they match it? And if you swapped some of your salary for a pension, because of all the amazing tax benefits you're going to have, is that going to work out to be beneficial? And then 5th, if you run a limited company, speak to your accountant about reducing your corporation tax bill. And one of the main ways you can do that, and one of the main ways Cassie and I do that here at Cervello, is by paying more into our pensions. So there's your 5 tips for the day. Next up, we've got our interview with Peter Hyson, who's going to be talking to us about when we're going through a transitional period of our lives, working out the things that we might want to think about when we're making that change. Hope you enjoyed the interview, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi Peter, how are you?
Good morning, Chris. I'm great, thank you.
Amazing.
Sunshine outside the door, and lots to talk about this morning. So.
Really excited. I actually, in preparation for this interview, I watched one of your presentations on YouTube. And what I want to do a lot of today is talk about purpose, because it's a conversation that I certainly have with a lot of my clients. And there were some really good insights in that YouTube video about purpose. If you just Google Peter's name and have a look on YouTube, I'm sure it will come up. But it was a really good presentation. Where was that? Do you know where that was?
Well, I'm not entirely sure which one you're looking at, but I suspect, is it shot out in the open?
No, it was in a sort of classroom style affair. It was posted by somebody else, but it was about finding your spiritual. I think it was coaching and spirituality. I think it was to a room of coaches as well.
Yes. That was at a conference room up in London.
Okay, fair enough.
A year or so ago.
Yeah. Okay, great. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is for all of our guests, to make sure there's no surprises, I always email them a set of questions. And you've told me we're just going to choose to ignore those questions. So it might be a bit useful for me to have a framework, but I'm really excited about the side roads we might go down just by having no questions at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, let's be fair. I wasn't saying I was going to ignore that. What I was getting at is it's very easy when somebody sends me a list of questions that I then jot down what I think are really great answers.
Yeah.
And of course, they're so great when they're written down that I then am tempted to read them in the interview. And then it just sounds as if I'm reading all the answers rather than having the conversation.
Yeah, you want a dynamic conversation, don't you? That's the key, isn't it? So let's start with one of the questions on my list, but it's a really nice open one. Tell me a bit about you.
Okay, lots of things really. I'm a novelist. I started doing that when I was doing lots of consultancy work for other people, and I wanted to do something that was both creative and gave me full control.
Yeah.
And the idea is, if you write a novel, you create the storyline, you create the characters, they do what you as the author tell them to do.
Yep.
But they don't. I very soon discovered that the wretched characters argue back.
Yeah. In your own head, right? So
voices, don't worry. And of course, the really frustrating thing is that they're always right.
Yeah.
They're saying, I as a character would not say this, I would not do this. It's just not consistent, and they are right.
Yeah. So they took a life of their own. Just out of interest, when you're writing a novel, do you start with the end in mind? Do you start with a framework of the story you want to tell? How did that work for you?
Well, it varies. The one that's the most substantial that I'm writing at the moment, I had an idea for a story and a context for it, which is Wimbledon Common in London.
Yeah.
And I knew the ending of the story immediately. And it's going to be 4 characters who live around Wimbledon Common, who at different points over a year meet a kind of cloaked, hooded figure. And it's always at the moment where they're being triggered into some rethinking of where they want to be. And the story ends with each of them encountering that character.
Right.
So then it was a matter of giving each of the 4 people their own storyline, their own story arc. What was it that they were being challenged to rethink or redo? And then put that into an interesting story framework and build other people and characters around it. That sort of thing, really.
And does the mysterious figure on Wimbledon Common trigger that change in their lives, or is it something they've been thinking about? How does the figure come into play?
The figure is the catalyst,
Yeah.
if you like.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's something which, in the run-up to the encounter, I hope readers will think, there is something here, there's something you need to look at which you're not looking at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the point at which they encounter the cloak, although they have no direct interaction with the figure in the cloak, that's when it really starts off the process.
Right. Right.
And then they have other encounters over the course of the year.
Really interesting.
Another one that was triggered purely because it's a short story, or maybe a series of short stories. When I was out cycling locally, and we've got 2 neighbouring villages here, one called Colchester and one called Ashley.
Okay.
And there is a signpost where they're both on top, on the signpost, and it says Ashley Colchester.
Right.
And I thought, now there's also a place in London called, and the name has just gone from me as I started to say, Austin Friars.
Yes.
And I thought, well, what about writing a short story where all the characters are literally geographical place names?
Love that. Yeah, really, really good. You know what? It reminded me of a story of when I was at school, and we had a teacher, a French teacher, new to the classroom. And I went to school in a local comprehensive in East London, and this teacher's name was Mr. Watt. So it's W-A-T-T. And the kids weren't particularly kind to him when they found out his first name was Hugh, because that became Hugh Watt, and that's all that got chanted throughout the school during the year. But I like that name. I like the names meaning something else as well. Do you know what I mean? That sort of connection is really interesting. So yeah, that's really good.
There are some brilliant combinations. I mean, there are real places. Every single one is a real place that you would find in an atlas, but there is just some wonderful names.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. So talk to me, I mean, it's really interesting talking about your novel and people going through that fundamental change in their life, because certainly that's what you do in the day job, if you want to call it that. Tell us a little bit about your business. What do you do day to day?
We work with people who are at a major crossroads in life, and we help them find a new direction.
Yeah.
But it may be somebody who's just sold a business. We work with a lot of people who are saying sort of 6 months, 9 months, a year or so after they've sold the business, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm at a loose end. I don't have to work again, I've got money in the bank, but I need to find something, a way forward, and I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Or somebody who's been made redundant, for example, or maybe they've had a bad health diagnosis, a relationship breakup. And typically it's because they're being challenged to reconsider everything that they've taken for granted up to that point.
Yeah.
And it just feels like a mist coming down. You know, I mean, I've been there a couple of times in my own life. And it feels as if you're out in the countryside and you've lost everything that gives you that sense of direction.
Yeah.
And all the signposts, all the trick points have disappeared. Really disorientating. And so we help them using the power of story to create and write their next chapter.
Amazing.
And then we support them in actually achieving that.
So, and this is the really interesting thing, because I'd imagine the work you do helping clients support that also helps you write the book, right? Because the novel, everybody's going through a transitional process, and you see that transitional process in reality. So, are any experiences from real life clients made it into the novel yet?
Well, Chris, I have to say, in our dining room, we do have one of those metal plates that says, "Be careful what you say, you'll end up in my novel."
Yeah. Yeah. No.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
Neither in the novel nor in either of the academic books that I wrote. They're not. They are based on real people.
Yeah, but you never use the real experience.
One person. They're a composite.
Yeah, absolutely. So help me understand, like, so people get to that point where they go, I'm trying to work out what the next step is in my life. And I know for a lot of the conversations you have, you talk about purpose. Help me understand that process of how you help people work out what their purpose might be for that next stage.
Well, we do it in different ways, but if I describe what we do on our 5-day retreats, that gives the best kind of example, I think,
Yeah.
which we do in 2 parts. So we do an initial 3-day retreat, and we do it in nice surroundings, comfortable hotel, lots of space to walk, think, go to the gym, sauna, those sorts of things. And what we're helping people do is just look back and look at the stories that we all tell about things that have happened to us in the past. We all do. We do it to make sense of what happens to us. We do it to help us understand. Sometimes we do it, if we're honest, to kind of make ourselves look slightly better.
Yeah.
It might be a bad situation. And I've got 2 or 3 stories that I use in that context.
Can I just interrupt? Can I just interrupt one thing, because I've been guilty of that in the past, and I actually probably still am. But I think what I've come to realise is that sometimes when you frame the story so that you're the hero every time, and I think as humans we're probably all guilty of doing that, there's an element where you don't learn enough. And sometimes looking at a situation more realistically allows you to say, I might have done things a bit differently. What do you think about that?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah,
That's absolutely right. I mean, and they are very valuable because they help us cope and survive and take some encouragement out of those stories.
Yeah.
So yes, we create ourselves as the hero, and we need to do that.
yeah,
And what we tend to do then is we tell that story to 1 or 2 trusted people. And if we get the reaction that we want, then the story becomes a bit firmer. And if we don't, we tend next time to tell that story slightly differently. And once we've told it 3, 4, 5 times, it almost becomes fit like concrete.
yeah,
10 years, 20 years later, we'll be telling the story in that same format.
yeah,
So you're absolutely right. One of the first, we get people to identify just a number of stories. We don't say why. We just say, tell us these key moment stories. And then we help them look back and say, so, okay, maybe on this story, you're there as the hero. What happens if you tell it slightly differently? Maybe you're the observer. Well, let's have fun with it. Because humour plays a big part in what we're doing. Tell us that same story where you're the villain. You're this evil person flying in. Use the kind of core of the story. Use the main parts of the incident, but tell it from that different perspective.
Yeah.
And then we do that 2 or 3 times, and of course you begin to see that there are some themes coming out. So one of the things that comes out from my stories, where I tend to tell it as being the hero, but in some ways I'm also the villain, I begin to see that under pressure, if I'm not careful, I go into naughty teenager role.
Right.
So I become stropping. I ask belligerent questions. I don't mean them to be belligerent, but that's the way they come out. And over time, we can see from those stories where we're at our best and where we have some vulnerabilities or some weaknesses or some people that we don't get on well with. And then the next stage of those two, the initial 3 days in the retreat, is saying, okay, so let's take those strands and begin to pull them together. What are we seeing about the sort of person that we are today? The story that's in front of us, the story that's sitting in this room with 5 or 6 other people. And then we have a gap of about 10 weeks, again with some more thinking and working to do. And then we come back for the final 2 days, and that's where we're drawing all the strands together. So if you like, we've done our story arc, and in the second part, the 2 days, we're drawing those strands together and saying, what's the story that's emerging? Because in many ways, although we talk about those first set of incidents as stories, in many ways they're just chapters in the overarching story. So in the final 2 days, we're talking about purpose. And you at your best, what's your purpose in life? What do you want to achieve? What are you being prepared to do? And that becomes the next chapter that they write. And then we help them using a life story canvas model to write that chapter, to have an action plan. So that when people leave, they know exactly what they're trying to write.
And just so we make sure we get a plug for your book in, that's all laid out in your book, which what I really enjoyed about your book is it was full of practical tips, but along a sort of broader narrative that includes a timeline and thinking about sort of these things. And how it helps us move forward. I mean, it's really interesting. One thing I've learnt about myself a bit more over the last couple of weeks is because I've had this ear operation and I've been recovering, I am not a good patient. I'm definitely not a good patient. However, one of the things that you're asking people to do, and these are probably people who have hung their hat on a particular identity, is be vulnerable. And that's sometimes difficult, isn't it? So how do you make sure that people are vulnerable and open and honest enough to be ready to make that change?
I think it only comes if they are at a position where they're willing to do some thinking and some exploring and some challenging. And also in a situation where they trust us. So I think one of the things that makes the retreat format so effective is because you're there for 3 days initially, you get to know us, you get to know myself and my partner Hilary, or one of our trusted associates, and therefore it's easier to begin to open up and explore. And you don't get that in the same way if you're just doing it with a coach maybe for an hour at a time. It just takes longer. It's
the environment that creates that bond quicker,
but
doesn't
much as you found with your ear operation, when we're taken outside our normal environment, our brain wonderfully starts to process all those things that it doesn't get a chance to do normally because we're throwing so much other stuff into it. And it will do that much more effectively. But the book was designed with one particular audience in mind, somebody who sold a business, and it's done from that perspective. What we found was, and it doesn't entirely surprise me, I thought this would be the case, it's actually quite difficult to take a book like that and work through the activities on your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people have said to me, we got a third of the way through, we got half the way through. We went off thinking, went off planning, went off really enthused, and then life, if you like,
Got in the way. Got in the way, yeah. I mean,
and that's why we started doing the idea of the retreats. And then, of course, in lockdown, because you can't do that face to face, we're starting to do it now with a series of webinars.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a couple of interesting points that apply to both our businesses, interestingly, because certainly with our clients, I've got a new client who started working with this week, and he sent me this email, and he said, one of the things that's been bugging me is you've asked me to collate all this information, and I've been putting it off for 10 years, and I've got a feeling that if I was on my own, I'd put it off for another 10 years. So part of working with a professional, be it a financial planner, a coach, or whatever it may be, is there needs to be a relationship of trust, but there also needs to be a relationship of accountability on both sides. You know, even though our clients pay us to do work, we need to be impartial enough to be able to challenge them to say, look, if we're going to get you to a point where you are financially free or know what's happening next, we need to have a relationship where I'm going to ask you to do stuff, and actually I'm earning my fee by being that challenge, because you wouldn't challenge yourself on your own. So I think that accountability is really, really important.
Yeah,
I think
that's absolutely right, and that's why digging down and finding or brushing off again that sense of purpose for each of us is so important. Because if we find that sense of purpose, if we re-embrace it, it catapults us out of bed in the morning, full of excitement, because it just feels right.
Yeah.
It just feels as though this is what I was put here to do. This is
100%.
the Peter Hyson-shaped piece in the world that nobody else actually can do but me. And now I know what it is. I know I can start exploring that. Hilary has a fabulous term she came across a couple of days ago, which is about we act as the Sherpa.
Okay.
And it's the Sherpa when you're climbing these mountains that not only carries some of the baggage, but also acts as the guide.
Yeah.
They're the trusted person who says, I've been up here before. I know it's tough, I get all of that, but actually I'm here to help you get to the top successfully. And
know that as they've done it before, it's possible, right? When sometimes when people feel that it's not, it's really, really interesting. The other point I was going to make was the point that you made about people not being ready. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a call from a client that we started to engage with 2.5 years ago, and was really super keen, and just didn't engage. So phoned us 2.5 years later, and I was just curious, because I said, look, we got on really well. You told me I was able to help, and we were able to work together. And he said, yeah, Chris, that was never in question. It's just life got in the way. And from my perspective, I think it was because he just wasn't ready. You know, you need to be prepared and to make the commitment to go, right, I need to get this organised now, and I need to move forward. Have you met people who say superficially, it's niggling at me, but the niggling isn't strong enough for them to take action at that particular point?
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's entirely right, and sometimes it's for very good reasons. So, for example, we would be very cautious about working too soon with somebody who's just had a very traumatic relationship breakdown, or a bereavement, or even a health diagnosis, because the issues that they need to explore initially are probably closer to the specialist counsellor in those areas. So we do have a number of people who we have carefully selected. This sounds like an advert, doesn't it? People that we trust,
Yeah.
who are professionals in those areas where we would do the referral.
Yeah. Do you think...
And equally, if that happens when we're working with somebody on a retreat, we always have somebody who is on call for that period of time, who we can say, this is great, that's absolutely what you need to do in this, at this point in time. Take a few minutes out, bring this person, go and have a chat, and then we'll see where we go from there.
It's really interesting though when you talk about that relationship breakup, because certainly if I look at my own identity, it's not only as a business owner and as a man, but also as a dad and a husband. And I suppose that even though those things might not change fundamentally if you've got kids, the dynamic certainly changes, and you've got to sort of recreate yourself, haven't you? So even though you've got to be careful about when you do it, rewriting your own story is probably important for people who are going through those transitional changes.
And sometimes life does it.
Yeah.
We used to call it the midlife crisis. Sometimes it happens much earlier now, even in the 30s. And you spend some time building what you assume is going to be your career or your lifestyle, your life choices. And then something happens and you think, do you know what? This just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It's this thing about climbing up the ladder and you suddenly find the ladder is at the wrong wall. So you've got to look around. It's quite difficult to do that when there's a confusion and the uncertainty, because it challenges everything that's happened.
Yeah.
It's there are several models that underpin what we do.
Yeah.
But the one at this point is called the existential leap. And it's typically where, for whatever reason, you feel as if you're standing on the edge of a precipice and looking over, and you know that's the way forward. But typically we will loop around for quite some time because the edge looks scary and you've got to leap, but you don't know that you can land safely on the other side. You don't know what the other side's going to look like. Yeah. You just know where you are isn't working anymore.
Yeah, and it does take a while to get to that point, does it? I mean, it's interesting. When I launched Cervello, it's coming up to 12 years now, I left a really decent, secure job in the city to do it. And I remember coming home and Charlotte, who's my 16-year-old, who's actually opposite me in the office at the minute because she's doing a college online, and she's my tech expert, so she sets all this stuff up. So she's been helping me out this morning. I remember she was probably five when I came home and said, really excited. I'm going to set the business up, and I don't know if you remember this, Charlotte, but Charlotte started crying, and I was like, I'm quite excited. I'm scared, but I'm also quite excited. Why are you crying? And her first immediate response was, who's going to pay for the holidays now? And what was interesting is that scared me, because I was taking a move from something that was quite secure to something that was quite uncertain. But also gave me a drive to make sure that it worked, because I didn't want to let Cassie and Charlotte down. But also, I don't know if you've found this, because I know that you've sort of had relatively secure jobs in teaching, and you worked in Ofsted, and you've done a number of other stuff. Do you think being a business owner is resilience building? Do you reckon it builds your sort of, I wouldn't say appetite to risk, but builds your comfort with that sort of change?
Comfort? No, probably not.
Okay.
I've set up 3 different businesses at least, probably more, and each one of them has come because I knew what I was doing wouldn't continue to be viable.
Okay.
And therefore, I kind of looked around and thought, what do I really want to do? What do I want to do that I'm not getting at the moment? And each time that's been, therefore, to do that, I've set up a business, basically. So, no, I was kind of into it because that seemed better than what I was doing. Is it scary? Does it risk losing the holidays? Absolutely. And if I'm being really honest in this context, twice in that business career, we've sold our house in order to raise money, in order to keep that business afloat, because we believed that that was the right thing for us to be doing. Yeah. So there is, there's a cost to it, but there's massive enjoyment.
Sure.
I have freedom. I am fundamentally unemployable now. Because I'm just not a corporation person.
Yeah.
I'm asking embarrassing questions about, well, why are we doing this? Well, isn't this a better way of doing it? And, I have to be my own person. So
that's the problem with doing your own thing, because you end up. I get asked to be on boards of certain organisations and get involved in community groups and things like that, and I always sort of dip my toe and attend like one or two committee meetings and realise that committees and me just don't mix. I don't do committees particularly well, and I'm just better off just sharing some ideas from afar, and if they don't get applied, that's not on me, because I know that if I was on that committee and action wasn't taken, it'd be quite a frustrating process.
Somebody said a little while ago, the trouble with you, Peter, is you need a big stage.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely right. That's great. I love a big stage.
Yeah.
I at one stage, one of the things that I was going to say when you were talking about getting to know me, slightly tongue-in-cheek, was I was once engaged to Sue Pollard.
Oh, right, okay.
Pollard and Heidi High and those programmes.
Yeah.
And I can say that with some tongue-in-cheek because she and I grew up on amateur stage acting in Nottingham.
Gotcha, right.
And in one of those plays that we did together, I was actually engaged to her for a sum total of about 10 minutes. That's the sort of stage, really.
Sue Pollard, absolute legend, Sue Pollard. That's amazing.
And what you see is absolutely Sue.
Yeah. So that's her, is it? But then I suppose the challenge you've got. I suppose the challenge you've got about that long-term sustainable relationship is, and I say this in the politest way possible because I am one, if you've got a bit of a show-off and you've got two show-offs, that relationship dynamic might be a bit challenging, right?
Yes.
Good.
I think part of what I've also had to learn, and I think the good actors do this really well, and I'm not suggesting I'm a good actor, but they project the person that is truly them in that character.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody on TV or on the stage in live theatre, and you get the feeling this is about them showing off about what they can do, it doesn't work.
No.
It has to be comfortable on a stage where you're projecting something that's authentic.
Yeah, and that authenticity, is the key. You've got to, you've like sort of as a presenter, as a coach, as anybody who presents whatever they do for a living, you've got to believe it, haven't you? Because if you don't, I think people see straight through it.
Yes, and alongside that, I often say when I'm taking programs, I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
I've been through some of the experiences. I can tell you what worked for me. I can tell you what I think is going on, but I don't know all the answers, and you will know some things I don't.
Yeah. I think part of having a honest professional relationship with anybody is saying, being open to what you don't know as well as what you do know. And I think that, again, that continues to build trust, doesn't it? Because you're being upfront about where you are. It's really interesting what you said about like you've personally gone through some of this journey and some of these experiences, and I'd imagine as a coach, you get coached along the way as you're learning to be a coach. What have you learnt the most about yourself through being a coach and the work you do?
Well, one of the things is I like a big stage.
Yeah.
One of the things is I'm not employable in a corporation.
Yeah.
But I've also, and I'll come on to positives in a moment, but I've also learned that I like asking questions. I have to understand something to the best of my knowledge before I can commit to it. And sometimes in the wrong context, those questions can seem quite undermining.
Okay.
So I've had to learn how to ask the right questions at the right time, which I think is also an important coaching technique, and important when we're working with people in stories. Yeah. Because, those stories are the things that have happened to them.
Yeah.
I can't go into those stories. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I can say, well, what happens if you look at it from this perspective? So I think one of the key things I've learned is that there are always more perspectives than you're aware of at the time.
I suppose,
and those are quite important to explore.
Again, it's really interesting. I mean, even though we're a financial planning business, we do like to really understand our clients' hopes, dreams and aspirations. And one of the challenges that I've faced when having those really interesting, deep conversations about life is not applying my morals, principles, values, frame of the world onto that particular individual. And again, I'm asking this because I'd love to learn how to do it better. How do you make sure that you're curious enough that you're trying to understand where they're coming from without being too intrusive?
That's a really good question. And it takes, I think, years to learn to do it as effectively as you can. And even then, I don't always get it right. So I try and make a feature of saying at different times during any conversation, this is only my perspective. You'll see it differently. I mean, probably the funniest but appropriate example, I was working for a corporation that took over the running of all the schools in Bradford. And in the very early days when I was sent to work up there, they had those northern race riots, the Bob riots. Yeah. Bradford was one of the places. And somebody noticed that on my CV, it mentioned the word community. And so they said, right, well, you better go up there, you better head up the response to the race riots from the community perspective. And of course, so I'm going into these meetings and saying, and openly saying, it's the only way I could see to do it. Okay, you will see, I am white, male, middle class, and coming from a Christian background.
Yeah.
That's who I am. I have no qualification to be here other than to listen and to reflect back and to be the catalyst for what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I guess the short answer is just being aware of where I am coming from and the lenses that I have and the cultural background, cultural assumptions, and trying to make those, where appropriate, they're an advantage, and not let them be a barrier, but just be open about it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's who I am.
Yeah, 100%. Now, one of the interesting things that my recent recuperation has allowed me to do is watch a lot more TV. And to be frank, 2 days in I'd had enough. But there was a really good documentary on Netflix while I was off called Playbook, A Coach's Rules of Life. And it talked to people like Jose Mourinho, I'm going to completely butcher his name now, but I think it's Patrick Mogletu, who's the tennis coach of Venus Williams. There was an NBA coach who was amazing. And interestingly, I found myself watching it and thinking the principles that they talk about are transferable. Do you think that coaching, sports coaching, people to transition to the next step, coaching people to make sure they're in a position where they're financially free, like the work we do, has things that they can learn from each other, and if so, what's the thing you've learnt most from a coach in a particularly different field?
Yes, I mean, clearly the answer to that is yes. I smile because one of my earliest careers, was as a professional swimming coach.
Okay.
I've ever said that to you. In my late 20s and 30s.
Peter, can I be really honest though? Not as impressive as being engaged to Sue Pollard.
Yes. So the answer to your question is yes, there are a lot of transferable things. Excuse me. And I think I probably learned the initial skills of coaching from those days in swimming, because you can stand on the sidelines, you can stand on the side of a pool and you can scream and shout at the swimmers and you get a degree of performance out of them. But actually the most effective coaches, they know their swimmers as individuals, they listen to where they are.
Yeah.
And at times I used to say to those individuals, a couple of those swimmers, you need to take a couple of weeks off. Don't train for 2 weeks. And I knew my phone would ring the following morning. I would have their parents on the phone, absolutely tearing my ear off, because I was telling them not to train, and swimmers train, and how will they ever get to the nationals and the international team if I'm telling them to take 2 weeks off?
Yeah.
It was because I talked to those individuals and I knew that they were at a point where they needed the break.
Yeah.
So, and I only got that by listening to them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. So there was there's a coach that was talking on Playbook, and if you've got Netflix, I'd recommend you watch it, because certainly I learned a lot from it. Called Doc Rivers, and he's an NBA coach. And they asked him on the documentary, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever had? And he said, the worst piece of advice I've ever had was from a coach when I first started coaching, was don't get involved with your players individually. Don't get to know them. And he was like, a brand new coach, he was like, why are you telling me this? He went, because they'll let you down. And he said, that's the worst piece of advice I've ever had. I actually get to know all my players personally, knowing that they'll let me down, knowing that we'll go through that roller coaster journey of emotion and we won't always get on, but knowing that if they know that I'm always on their side and we're personally engaged, I'll get the best out of them. And it's really interesting, isn't it?
Really important point, sorry, I'm cutting across slightly, but really important point, because it's a part of it is, why am I doing this? This is not about me, the coach.
Yeah.
It's not about whether those swimmers will let me down, whether business clients I work with or individuals I work with will let me down. That's irrelevant. They may do, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm here to try and help them and help them explore and stand alongside them. So Nancy Klein, who's an American coach and author, said the brilliant coach brings out the brilliance of their clients.
I like that. I really like that. Yeah, it's really good. Thank you. So, with the bombshell that you used to be engaged with Sue Pollard and be a sport. The weird thing is, Peter, we've known each other now for, I don't know, 6-8 months, or we had a really amazing dinner in London when people used to be able to meet, and we started to get to know each other. I'm learning new things about you every day, which I really like. So thank you for sharing. What I'd like our audience to do is be able to get in touch with you if they need to. So help us understand if people would like to know more about your work, would like to know more about your book, would like to know about your retreats. Help us understand a bit more about where they can find out about all of that.
The easiest bit is on the website. So next chapter retreats, .guru, which I say with some embarrassment, but we tried to get all sorts of other endings to next chapter retreats, and they'd all been taken. And somebody, I think, across the world has been buying up those to sell at exorbitant amounts.
Yeah.
They're still in the business.
But Guru was available.
And Guru was available. And well, actually, do you know what? It's a good one to have, because we can say with all honesty, who is the guru in these conversations? It's not me, it's the person we're working with.
Yeah.
You are the guru of your own life.
Yeah. It's about empowerment, isn't it? It's really interesting. You talk about gurus, and I understand with you, I don't consider myself a guru in any way, shape or form. But there was one of our sort of journalism contacts phoned me and said, we'd like you to appear in this video series we're building. I was like, okay, tell me a little bit about it. And they said, well, we know you run a podcast with your daughter where you talk to people about kindness and the great work they do in the world, because I want to, part of my purpose is do well, do good. I think if I can share some of the stories of people doing amazing work, that's part of my contribution back. I said, yeah, cool. Yeah, really love doing that. And what we'd like to do is, because you seem consistently happy, Peter, I'm not, and I certainly haven't been over the last couple of weeks, but people seem to assume that I am consistently happy. I sort of am, but not always. We'd like you to appear in this video series. Great. What's it called? It's called Good Life Gurus. So I've got, you know what? I'm not a guru, but it's fine, whatever. It sounds like a laugh, and part of my purpose is, can I have a lot of fun every day? And it sounded like quite a good fun. So I've got the phone. Said to Cassie, I'm appearing in this video series called Good Life Gurus, and as a joke, said, from now on, I only want you to call me Chris the Guru. So she went to me, I am never ever calling you a guru ever. And that really leveled me, put me in my place.
Yeah, I think it's right. It's the title that is difficult, isn't it? But for you as well as for me, if I really kind of try and be honest rather than put on any modesty or false modesty or insecurity, if we're not leaders in our own business, if we haven't had those experiences and been able to reflect on them, learn from them and potentially help others, if we're not guru in that sense, we really shouldn't be doing this. Yeah,
100%. I agree with that. I think the title of leader I'm happy with. Guru, probably a step too far, but yeah, no, it's really good. So just tell us a little bit before we go about your book, because I really enjoyed it, and I'd like our audience to know where to get that if they want to.
Yeah, and I will do that in just one moment. The other thing I wanted to say about contact is also look up my profile, Peter Hyson, on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Or from the website. Drop me an email. I'm always happy to chat. No commitments to. I just love talking to people and hearing their stories. So I'm very happy for people just to make contact via the website or LinkedIn. That would be great.
Amazing.
The book, Live the Work You Love, which is the second book, you can get on Amazon. It's available on Kindle. Check the Amazon prices, because one of them, and I think it's the hardback, because it's now they've sold all the hard copy versions of it. It's some ridiculous price, like £90.
Yeah, that's the Amazon resale thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just boosts the amount up. Silly.
The back is there. That's absolutely fine. It's there on Kindle. If you want a hardback and don't want to pay that price, drop me an email. I've still got a few of them in a cupboard under the stairs, which we give out to people from time to time, and I'll happily send you one.
I published a book on pensions in 2015, and I just as a little memento, I've got about 4 or 5. But yeah, it's just nice to have, isn't it? I mean, just because I'm just finishing up my second book now, which is about the work we do on the Kindness Project. But talk to me about your novel. When's that going to be out?
Oh, goodness. I do bits on it, get really enthusiastic, and then of course life gets in the way. Or I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because one of the characters is kind of saying something about what's not working or what is working, or the creative brain works whenever it decides it's going to work, and I'll do a bit more about it. So it's getting close.
Good.
It's still some way off.
Well, I'm sure you can come on to another Cervello Live and tell us when it's closer. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really good. And have a lovely day.
Thank you, Chris the Guru, and you too.
Thank you, Peter the Guru. It's appreciated. So that was the interview with Peter. Hope you really enjoyed that. Next week, we've got another amazing Cervello Live with a brilliant guest. I hope you have a lovely week, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to catching up with a lot of you soon. See you later. Bye.